So it's 1 p.m. July 30th, and it is time for Live at the Birmingham Museum. And you might notice I am alone today, but I'm not. Donna is behind the camera. Leslie is taking a well-deserved long vacation. So it's just going to be the two of us today, passing the camera back and forth. And so Donna might talk about this a little bit too, but we are both transplants to the area. We are not born and bred Michiganders. And so when I first moved to the area, when I was in elementary school, every time we were like going on a field trip into Detroit or whatever, and the bus went over a speed bump, there'd be someone that said, "Oh, that's Jimmy Hoffa." And I was a really confused 7-year-old. I was like, okay, so we're naming speed bumps now? Can I name the next one? And it took me a while before I kind of realized that this is kind of an enduring Metro Detroit mystery. Is, Jimmy Hoffa, he disappeared from the parking lot of the Machus Red Fox restaurant on this day, 1975. And no one knows where he went, where he ended up. Was he dead? Was he alive? And all that. And Donna's going to talk about some of the theories as to how he got there. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. So there's a Birmingham connection, because Harris Machus lived in Birmingham. A lot of his restaurants were in Birmingham. And then as I dove deeper into his story, he has such a remarkable life. And we really wanted to focus on him today, because I think Jimmy Hoffa should be a footnote in the Harris Machus story, and not the other way around. We shouldn't get it twisted. So I guess to start, let's talk about his early life. And to start about his early life, we have to go back to his mom and his dad. So his dad's name was Hans Machus, and he was actually born in Germany. His mother was Catherine, and we think she might have been born in Ireland or in the U.S. Her parents were definitely born in Ireland. There's some debate as to where she was born. So we do have an immigrant story there as well. And so Hans worked for many years in a renowned bakery in Chicago. And then in 1908, the family relocated to Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. And Harris was born there in 1908. And in 1911, the family relocated again to East Lansing, where Hans opened up the Machus Bakery and Pastry Shop. And the family lived there for a couple decades. Harris went to Michigan State University, and there he enrolled in the ROTC purely because he wanted an opportunity to ride horses. And I have never come across something so relatable in my life as that. I mean, if you want me to go anywhere, all you gotta do is tell me there will be horses there, and I am there. And he also met his future wife Elaine there as well. And then in 1933, Hans and Catherine moved to Madison Street here in Birmingham and opened up a bakery at 150 West Maple. And you can see I have notes. I always tell people think that people who work in museums or as historians need to memorize almost every single date. And you don't have to. Sometimes you can have a cheat sheet. I love my cheat sheets because I can't remember numbers to save my life. So they opened up a bakery at 150 West Maple. And then in 1942, Harris and Elaine moved to Birmingham to help out his parents with their bakery. And 1942, World War II is kicking off, and Harris is called up for military service, because he did do really well in the ROTC, yep, those are the initials. And so he actually earned the rank of first lieutenant in the cavalry. And so he is assigned as a company commander with the 1st Armored Division.
I do want to add, I read in the newspaper that he was quite disappointed. He thought he was joining the cavalry because of the horses, yep. And then he found out it was tanks and was like, really?
Yeah, World War II is really where the cavalry moves to. There is some heavy machinery and also still horses. World War I, we still had horses. World War II is where we make the complete switch over. And so, yeah, a lot of those guys, like Patton, who was in the cavalry, they were horsemen. They were equestrians. And so, yeah, there were probably a lot of disappointed men who were, we just had the doorbell ring, but there's only 2 of us, so we are staying here. Sorry to whoever is at the door. So he is sent to North Africa in Tunisia. He's with the 1st Armored Division. And at the Battle of Kasserine Pass, he is wounded and captured. And so he's captured by German forces, and they take him to a POW camp in Italy. And he recovers there, and they're about to ship him off to another POW camp. And he decides, nah, not for me, not today. He jumps out of a train window while the train's going through the Alps. He jumps out of a window to escape. And he hangs out with some villagers just in a random village in the Italian Alps, hiding from the German army until 1944, where he is captured by the Germans and sent to another POW camp in Germany. And from there, they sent him to another camp in Poland. And at that time, the Soviet army is moving into Polish territory, and the German army is retreating. And Machus uses the opportunity of all that chaos to hide in a haystack and again escape from another POW camp. From there, he comes out, he hangs out with the Russians for a little bit. The Russians put him on a train to Odessa. He gets on a British ship and he comes back. So we have a map here of Machus's adventures. So Tunisia's cut off, but you know, Tunisia's down here, North Africa. And so the first POW camp he was at was Chieti in Italy. And from there he was sent kind of north. He's hanging out here. This is kind of where he escaped. He's sent to Moosburg and going up to a flag 64. And then that is where he escaped again. And he went down to Odessa to get on that British ship to come back home. And it should be noted that this entire time, his family had no idea where he was. In fact, he was assumed dead. Battle of Kasserine Pass was where the American forces were defeated. It was a pretty bad battle. And so his family didn't hear from him after that. And actually, in a Birmingham directory and in a census from 1944, Elaine is listed as his widow. So when he comes back in 1945, it was probably a really exciting moment, and one that his family wasn't expecting, but a very happy surprise for them. And so he was awarded a Purple Heart and a Silver Star for valor. And he comes back to the family bakery. By 1947, he was running the bakery. I'm not sure if his dad was sick or dead by that point. And then in 1951, a very seminal change happens. If you've watched our previous live all about Jacobson's department store, you will note that 1950 was when Jacobson's opened downtown around where the bakery and pastry shop was. So suddenly there were more and more people in that area, and they wanted maybe more than just pastries and cakes. So he started catering to the shoppers coming downtown, and that is where Donna is going to pick up the story because she's our resident Jacobson's expert.
So last week we did talk a little bit about how Jacobson's was on the corner of Bates and West Maple on the north side, and it just so happens that the bakery was on West Maple on the north side, about a block east. So all the women who were heading from downtown Birmingham going to shop at Jacobson's had to walk right past the bakery. Now in 1951, Harris decides, well, there's a lot of women coming through, and he starts offering coffee and soda and sandwiches. And of course that turns into the Pink Tea Room, and by 1957, the bakery was fully expanded into the restaurant named Machus West Maple. Yes, and I'm looking at my notes too, because just like Caitlin and most historians I know, dates, you start getting them confused, and you have to look, because I'll throw out an 1800s when I'm talking about 1900s too, so. Now, 1957 will be when Harris Machus starts Harris Machus Enterprises. Going back before the war, he did pick up a job at Standard Brands and was working with a gentleman named Bill Knapp's. You've probably heard of Bill Knapp's restaurants. Well, Bill Knapp's and Machus were friends until the very end. Bill Knapp would actually help his wife Elaine during the war to write down Hans Machus's recipes for the bakery. Hans Machus would actually die during World War II, so Harris would come home to realize that his father is gone and that he has to run the bakery. But Harris decides that this would be a great time to start expanding. The restaurant on West Maple was doing very well, and so he would start opening up another bakery at Adams Square, and this one would be Machus Adams Square. And also the same year, 1865, he would open up the Machus Red Fox. And it would become famous actually at this time for the food. It would win national awards, and Harris would continue then throughout the 60s and 70s to open up 7 more restaurants, including the Sly Fox here in Birmingham, but he would also open up restaurants in Dearborn, Rochester, Troy, and he would actually open up a restaurant called the Hungry Fox in the Jacobsons in Saginaw. So yet another Jacobsons connection. It seems like Birmingham will always be associated with Jacobsons in one way or another. Now, through that, he was also helping other restaurants. You know that Bill Knapp went kind of nationwide, but Harris really wanted to stay in the Birmingham area. He wanted to be able to go to each and every single one of his restaurants, talk to the people, work with the people, work in the kitchens. He was very hands-on. So he kind of stayed in the area, and he figured the restaurants that he had were quite enough. He didn't need to go national. But he would become president of the National Restaurants Association in 1984 through 1985. And then for 10 years served as a director for the association. He was really responsible for bringing what we consider the professionalism into restaurants, the idea of a chain restaurant, the idea where, you know, if you go into the Sly Fox or the Red Fox or the Hungry Fox or Foxy's in Troy and Rochester, you were going to get consistent service, you were going to get good service, you were going to get consistent food and cleanliness. Before the 1950s, a lot of restaurants were just your sort of mom and pop restaurant, not really connected to an association, just sort of like, you know, if mom wanted to clean the kitchen got cleaned. If mom did not want to clean the kitchen, you kind of didn't know what you were walking into.
You know,
so
some extra flavoring.
So, you know, it was kind of one of those iffy things. If you knew where you were going and you trusted people, great. If you were on a road trip and you're walking into a restaurant you'd never been before, you had no clue what you were going to be walking into. So the idea of that chain restaurant, the idea of that consistency comes out of this time period, and Harris Machus was one of the people that really instituted this idea. He was also a big part of the Birmingham community. One of the awards he won, and I did try to find the date but couldn't, was the First Citizen of Birmingham Award. This was an award that was given to citizens in Birmingham that really went out of their way to make Birmingham a better place. It was probably instituted after Martha Baldwin, because she would have certainly won the award if it had been during her time period. But he was also president of the Chamber of Commerce. And one of the surprising ones that surprised me, and he was definitely involved in a lot of the business, starting businesses and financing and things like that, but he was also the director of the Cranbrook Art Academy. So, and he served on the Birmingham School Board several times. So he was definitely involved in Birmingham itself, trying to make Birmingham a better place, not just through restaurants, but through schools and art, and upstanding citizen of Birmingham. So it really makes what comes next a little sad. Because even though he achieved all of this in his life, one thing that happened 45 years ago would define his entire life for a generation of Michiganders. And that was when Hoffa, I'm like, oh my God, what's his name? When Jimmy Hoffa, like again, he should be a footnote in Harris Machus' story, not the other way around. Jimmy Hoffa would disappear from his parking lot.
He didn't even go in, did he? It was just...
He didn't even go into the restaurant. That's, you know, the funny thing is that it was just the parking lot. He was supposed to meet Anthony Giacalone and Anthony Provenzano, two very Italian gentlemen who were in the mob. And I do have a quick side story. I used to work with a Giacalone. He was the grandson. I'm not going to name names because his family was very well removed. They had nothing to do with that side of the family. But I always did pester him. I had to pester him. Where's Hoffa buried? Where's Hoffa buried? Where's Hoffa buried? He's like, I don't know. And I really truly believe he doesn't know, but you know. You never know. You never know. Anyway, where's Hoffa?
Tweet at us if you know.
Yeah, tweet at us if you know. But anyway, he was supposed to meet these two gentlemen at 2 p.m. and they were going to probably meet and eat at the Red Fox. It was picked because it was neutral territory. That was the biggest reason why the Red Fox was picked. Good food, neutral territory, meaning not associated with the mob. But they did not show. And Jimmy Hoffa would call his wife at 2:15 on the payphone in the parking lot, not inside, and complain to her that they did not show, and that he was going to be home sometime around 4 o'clock, and that he would grill up steaks for dinner that night. Well, nobody got their steaks because Jimmy Hoffa was never seen again. There was a report that he was seen in a car, an unidentified car, with a bunch of unidentified men. But that could be an iffy kind of, tale too. However, there are a ton of theories as to why he disappeared. He had just recently come out of prison after serving for racketeering and a bunch of other charges. And he was in prison with another mobster. And I guess he refused to kiss the ring because the other mobster was a made man and Jimmy Hoffa was not a made man, and he refused to give him the respect deserved. So some people say that this was just a vendetta to teach him a lesson. Another reason is that he could have just been angering some of the mob bosses. He was trying to get back into being union president for the Teamsters. And, well, the mafia did not want him back in as president, and he was trying to sort of convince them, get back on their good side. So we don't know how deep those troubled waters ran. And maybe he was accused of ratting somebody else out while in prison. He did talk to the FBI a couple times. How do you know what he gave and what he didn't give? So whatever the reason, the mob did not want Jimmy Hoffa around. Now, there are also a bunch of theories, of course, in Detroit, like Caitlin was saying, it's like every time you hit a road bump, because, there's the stories that he's buried in 696, that they were pouring concrete. But there's quite a lot of other theories, and I did write them down because some of them are quite out there. One of them was that he was chopped up and put into a barrel and transported to the Everglades to feed the alligators. Now, that's always a fun story, but that seems like a lot of work.
It does.
Yeah. Another one is that he was buried under Section 107 in the Giant Stadium. And the reason why they picked Giant Stadium is because they were trying to say that he was placed, again, inside a barrel to be taken to the boss who put the hit out on him, which was in New York, and that he was either cremated or buried under Giant Stadium. Now, the show Mythbusters have proven that Section 107 did not hold any bodies when it was torn down. So that's a theory that has been debunked. Another one was that he was thrown out while still alive from a plane over the Great Lakes and was drowned. But you kind of think maybe his body would show up after that one. Another one of my favorites is, of course, he was buried under the Ren Center, or that he was killed, put in a barrel, placed inside the trunk of a car, and then sent to Japan as scrap metal.
There's a lot of barrels involved.
There's a lot of barrels. And then, of course, we can never forget all the farms and houses where he was buried under around Oakland County.
And that's, I mean, one of the many things that COVID has stolen from us is, you know, the annual spring FBI field trip where they go out and they just dig up a random farm or a cul-de-sac.
In Oakland, usually in Oakland County.
Oh yeah, typically, yeah.
One was in just Milford,
Yep.
a Milford farm. So so the annual FBI Hoffa dig has been canceled this year.
Sadly.
Now, this is my favorite theory. This is in pop culture. I don't know if any of you guys are big fans of Warehouse 13. I've watched a few episodes. But the theory goes, well, according to the Warehouse 13, this isn't a theory, this is truth. You know, again, it is a fictional show. But the building was an entrance to a pocket universe in which random people would just get sucked into. And Hoffa would be sucked into this pocket universe, along with two warehouse agents that were investigating said pocket universe. Now, the original building was then quickly and quietly whisked away, and a new one was replaced in its place. So the original Red Fox actually exists in Warehouse 13 in the middle of the desert in an undisclosed location in section Imhotep 218G. Now, out of all the theories, this one's my favorite. I'm just saying.
It's
Pocket universe.
It's one with most interesting classification system, for sure.
So it's in a museum somewhere. It's in an archive. Now, Hoffa would eventually be declared dead in 1982, but because his disappearance was never solved, Machus Red Fox has become part of the mystery. And again, Harris Machus restaurant was chosen because it was not connected to the mob. And because of this, he seems to, like, if you Google Machus Red Fox, or if you Google Harris Machus, it always comes up, Jimmy Hoffa, Jimmy Hoffa, Jimmy Hoffa. And I think that's quite sad, because his contributions to Birmingham and his contributions to World War II were phenomenal. His son, Harris' son, did an interview and said that his father hated that association. His father was a good, upstanding citizen, and he always worried that, you know, his reputation would be tainted by this one episode. And unfortunately, when we Google, we find that true. And sadly, it's not fair. And so Birmingham Museum, we're going to change that narrative. You know, Machus Red Fox was an awesome restaurant, won national awards. It was a great place to eat, and Jimmy Hoffa is just a footnote. So, that's about what we have on Harris Machus, Jimmy Hoffa, and the Machus Red Fox. But we need you to come back next week because we have an awesome episode. It is going to be the history of Woodward, and we are going to go back 10,000 years to when mastodons roamed downtown Birmingham, or what would become downtown Birmingham. And yes, if Jenkins has existed 10,000 years ago, the mastodons would have shopped there too.
Confirmed.
So we'll see you next week. This is Donna. Bye. And Caitlin.
See you later.